The world's most widely used bullpup assault rifle design with a futuristic Cold War flair, the Steyr AUG is an iconic Austrian intermediate rifle adopted by nations the world over. Developed in the 1960s to replace the increasingly obsolete weapons in service with the Austrian armed forces, the so-called Universal Army Rifle would go on to be found in the hands of dozens of militaries and law enforcement units globally, even finding its way into service with less honourable militant and insurgency forces. Commercially successful for nearly 50 years, the AUG helped redefine what a rifle looked like, how it functioned, and how it was made, alongside other revolutionary intermediate assault rifles of the era, such as the M16 and FAMAS. Weighing in at 7.9 pounds, with a length of 31.1 inches, the AUG fires the intermediate 5.56x45mm cartridge out of 30 or 42 round box magazines, dispensing its ammunition at a rate of 680 to 750 rounds per minute. This bullpup design is effective at up to 300 meters, with rounds traveling at 970 meters per second. Over 100 years before the AUG was conceived, Joseph Werndl founded the Joseph and Franz Werndl & Company weapon factory and sawmill in Oberletten in early 1864, first developing the Werndl-Holub breech-loading rifle for the Austrian army in 1867. The company continued to produce and design weapons for the military and commercial markets into the 20th century. After a number of name changes and large successes over the manufacturer's first half-century in operation, the company moved its headquarters to the Austrian city of Steyr in a bid to increase production capabilities as demands for weapons increased, with the First World War looming on the horizon. In the wake of the Central Powers' defeat in the war a few years later, and the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, the Austrian manufacturer could no longer produce weapons, the aforementioned treaty banning Austria and her old ally Germany from doing so, and thus, the company shifted their focus to their automobile manufacturing, which had begun in 1916. By 1930, however, the company, once again rebranded, this time to Steyr Werke AG, resumed its weapons production, merging with another manufacturer to become Steyr Daimler Puch AG in 1934, but unfortunately being taken over and dissolved into the Reichswerke Hermann Göring manufacturing conglomerate with Germany's annexation of Austria in 1938, and would begin producing weapons and vehicles for the German war machine until the Soviets forced the occupiers out. Following the war, the company was restored as Steyr Daimler Puch AG, once again producing weapons, and the company again sought contracts with the Austrian army to produce weapons for them. Since the 1950s, Austria, and much of the free world, had adopted and fielded the Belgian FN FAL as their standard issue rifle, so much so it became affectionately known as the right arm of the free world. But by the 1960s, flaws in the weapon were starting to show, and with the introduction of intermediate assault rifles such as the M16, with its 223 Remington cartridge, the 7.62x51mm NATO chambered battle rifle, with its wooden construction, was starting to look old-fashioned. Thus, in the mid to late 1960s, Austria began to look for a replacement for its Sturmgewehr 58, a locally produced licensed copy of the FN FAL, with the recently restored Steyr arms beginning development on a design to put forth as a potential successor to the Belgian classic. Into the 1970s, Steyr would construct their new design around the bullpup rifle configuration, a design that, since its inception in the 1860s, hadn't been all that widely used or successful. Nonetheless, drawing inspiration from the British EM2 that had competed with the FAL, and the space-age materials used to construct the American M16, Steyr put together their first prototype in 1974, combining the rotating bolt of the AR-15 with the dual guide rods and short-stroke gas piston of the AR-18, also being built on an aluminium receiver with a primarily polymer-based body. Keeping with the trend set by many other NATO nations, such as the United States, the new weapon was to be chambered in an intermediate cartridge over the much larger and higher recoil NATO standard 7.62x51mm round, the Austrians settling on the round tip to be the new NATO standard, the 5.56x45mm cartridge, which would eventually become standardized in 1980. Over the next 3 years, Steyr would refine their new assault rifle design in conjunction with the Austrian army, integrating a quick-change barrel, folding foregrip, and integral 1.5x scope into their subsequent prototypes until, in 1977, the design was submitted to the Austrian army as the AUG, or Armee Universal Gewehr, which translates to Universal Army Rifle, being adopted soon thereafter as the STG, or Sturmgewehr 77, the 77 coming from the weapon's year of designation. The new assault rifle entered production the next year, known internationally as the AUG A1, and would become famous for many revolutionary features it included, from its futuristic design and construction to its ambidextrous controls and ejection ports, along with its two-stage trigger in the place of a traditional fire selector. Since entering production, several variants and improvements have emerged of the AUG design, beginning with the AUG H-Bar, or Heavy-Barreled Automatic Rifle. Developed alongside the AUG A1, the H-Bar is an automatic rifle designed to complement the AUG, featuring a longer and heavier barrel, along with an integrated bipod and utilizing an open bolt rather than the original's closed bolt, to improve sustained automatic fire. A decade after the original rifle entered production, in 1988, the AUG 9mm would be produced, this being a 9x19mm parabellum chambered submachine gun variant of the AUG design, featuring a shortened 16.5-inch barrel, new muzzle compensator, redesigned charging handle, and a magazine well adapter to accommodate for the 9mm magazines. Unlike the original, the AUG 9mm is a blowback operated weapon, not using the gas system used on the rifle version, and Steyr also offers kits for the AUG to convert them to the 9mm variant. Then, in 1997, the AUG A2 would be introduced, having a redesigned charging handle, and the integral sight was now removable and could be replaced with a Picatinny rail for other optics. Similarly, the A2's folding foregrip could also be removed and replaced with a Picatinny rail for use with other grips and bipods. Next, in 2008, the AUG A3 was introduced, featuring a Picatinny rail on top of the receiver instead of the iconic integral sight, along with an external bolt release, and is the most modern variant of the original AUG design, chambered in both 5.56x45mm and 300 AAC blackout rounds. The AUG A3 9mm was produced around the same time, being a 9mm chambered submachine gun variant of the A3, in a similar vein to the original AUG 9mm, this submachine gun having its own variant, the AUG 40, a 40 Smith & Wesson chambered version of the AUG A3 9mm. There also exist a number of civilian variants of the AUG, such as the AUG P, SA, and Z models, available with various options and accessories, and all being semi-automatic only to be legally compliant. Remaining in service to this day in all its forms, the Steyr AUG has become adopted by dozens of nations across the globe, from the armies of Austria and Australia to the law enforcement units of Brazil and Turkey, along with finding its way into the hands of insurgent forces in the Middle East and Asia. The AUG, with its unconventional and unusual design, was a pioneer of firearms design, especially in the field of bullpup rifles, becoming possibly the most successful bullpup rifle design ever produced, and, blazing a trail alongside the French FAMAS, the two rifles paved the way for the plethora of bullpup rifle designs available today. Furthermore, the AUG helped cement the era of the intermediate cartridge in the West, assisting the likes of the M16 and Galil in replacing the formerly standard 7.62x51mm battle rifles that were quickly becoming obsolete at the height of the Cold War, becoming one of the first weapons adopted in the new 5.56x45mm cartridge that has remained standard since its adoption by NATO in 1980. An unorthodox design, but a staple of the military world nonetheless, the Steyr AUG is one of the most iconic weapons ever developed, and the most successful bullpup rifle of all time. Thank you so very much for watching these videos. Please like and subscribe and comment below what you'd like to see me cover next.